Mom's sick, so I came instead.
Little girl walked into the blind date. What the Millionaire CEO.
It's already past 3:30.
The bell above the door chimed softly each time a customer entered Maple and Honey, a cozy neighborhood bakery. Ethan Carter sat at a corner table, alone. 35, perfectly dressed in a charcoal coat, he looked calm. But the kind of calm built over years of holding everything in. As the CEO of a fast-growing tech company, he was used to pressure, not blind dates. Yet that's why he was here. Because Olivia had insisted. She'd known Ethan long enough to see through his stoic walls, and she also happened to be close friends with Emma, the baker who worked here. Her voice still echoed in his mind. Ethan, she's not like anyone you've met. She's kind. She works hard. She's raising her daughter alone. She deserves someone gentle. Then some, softer. And you deserve someone who lets you breathe. He didn't believe in magical meetings, but he trusted Olivia. After 3 years of closing himself off, agreeing to this one blind date felt like something small but maybe important. He checked his watch. Almost time. He expected a woman, maybe a little nervous, maybe unsure. He didn't expect what happened next. The bell chimed again. A little girl, no more than 4, walked in wearing a pink dress and pigtails, one neat and the other slightly lopsided. Her shoes tapped gently on the floor as she scanned the room with big brown eyes. Her gaze locked on him. Then she walked straight to his table. Ethan blinked, unsure whether to speak or stand. She stopped beside him and announced, "Mom is sick, so I came instead." The entire bakery seemed to pause. A barista froze mid-step. A couple turned from the counter. No one said a word. Ethan leaned down, meeting her eye level. "You came for your mom's date?" The girl nodded, serious and firm. He softened his tone. "Why would you do that?" She looked down and fiddled with the hem of her dress before replying, "Because I heard Aunt Olivia say this could make Mommy happy. I don't know what a date is, but Mommy hasn't laughed in a very long time." Her voice wavered, not with fear but honesty. Ethan felt something in his chest tighten. "What's your name?" he asked. She lifted her chin proudly. "Sophie. I'm 4.5. Mommy is Emma. She works here. She makes the pies." Ethan recognized the name, the quiet blonde woman behind the counter on the days he'd come in after long meetings, always focused, always polite, her smile rarely reaching her eyes. Sophie continued, "Mommy wanted to cancel. She said she was too sick and tired. But I thought if someone nice came, maybe she'd try to smile again." A child who didn't understand love or loneliness, yet somehow understood what her mother needed most. Ethan pulled out the chair beside him. "Do you like hot chocolate?" She nodded so hard her pigtails bounced. While the drink was being prepared, Ethan asked, "What makes your mom happy?" Sophie didn't hesitate. She held up her fingers as she counted. "When I draw her hearts. When I tell her she's pretty, when I say I miss Daddy, but I'm glad she's here." The words hit him like a soft punch, gentle but devastating. He looked at her, this tiny girl with a huge heart who had shown up alone, all because she thought her mom deserved a reason to smile. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. She was on a mission. This wasn't an ordinary blind date, and this certainly wasn't an ordinary child. As Sophie dipped her spoon into the whipped cream, humming to herself, Ethan leaned back slightly and took her in, her courage, her honesty, her hope. He didn't know if Emma would ever show up, but in that moment he understood something with clarity. This isn't about meeting a woman tonight, he thought. This is about meeting the bravest little girl I've ever known. The waitress brought over 2 plates of warm pie and a mug of hot chocolate topped with a generous swirl of whipped cream. Sophie clapped softly, her eyes sparkling. "That's the one Mommy made this morning," she said, pointing excitedly. "Blueberry with cinnamon on the edges. She says cinnamon hugs your tummy." Ethan smiled, watching her spoon the whipped cream carefully, determined not to spill. It was like watching sunshine talk. She was bright, expressive, and completely unfiltered. "I did not know I was having dinner with such a pie expert," Ethan said. Sophie looked proud. "I help Mommy in the kitchen. Well, not with the oven, but I decorate boxes and I lick the spoon when she's not looking." She paused, then added thoughtfully, "Mommy always smiles when she bakes blueberry pies. I think it's her happy pie." Ethan leaned back, sipping his coffee. "So tell me, Miss Sophie, what else makes your mom happy?" Sophie swung her feet under the table, thinking. "She laughs when I tell her knock-knock jokes or when I draw silly faces on her lunch napkins, and she said—" Sophie leaned in a little like she was about to reveal a secret. "She said she would only go on a date if the person is nice to me." Ethan chuckled gently. "So am I passing your test so far?" Sophie looked at him seriously, as if assessing a report card. "You didn't laugh when I said I came instead," she said. "That means you're kind." He blinked. That unexpected honesty wrapped itself around him like a quiet truth he had not realized he needed. There was a silence, a soft, comfortable one. Then Sophie tilted her head. "Where's your little girl or boy?" Ethan looked down for a moment, his fingers brushing the handle of his cup. "I don't have one," he said. "I lost someone a long time ago, and I never really found my way back to people after that." Sophie considered this with the weight only children carry when they understand too much too soon. "Mommy lost Daddy," she said softly, "but I told her I'd share my heart until it doesn't hurt anymore." Ethan swallowed. He stared at her, this tiny human with wide eyes and a wisdom far beyond her years. "You're something special, Sophie," he said. She smiled shyly. The waitress returned with a small slice of pie and placed it in front of Sophie. Sophie gasped. "That's my favorite! Mommy still baked this morning even though she had a fever." She cut the pie in half with her fork carefully, as if it were a piece of treasure, and pushed the bigger half across the table toward Ethan. "You should eat it," she said. "I think you need happy pie more than me." Ethan could not speak. He nodded and took a bite. The warmth of the crust, the burst of blueberries, it was comfort folded into food. It tasted like care. And just as he swallowed, the door of the bakery flung open. "Sophie!" The voice came in short, breathless gasps. A woman stood at the threshold, blonde hair in a messy ponytail, cheeks flushed from the cold, an apron still tied around her waist. Emma. Her eyes landed on her daughter sitting at a table with a strange man. Sophie waved enthusiastically. "Mommy. He's really nice. And he likes your happy pie." Emma stared at Ethan, her gaze flickering from his kind expression to the napkin he held delicately, having just wiped a spot of chocolate from Sophie's chin. Ethan stood immediately. "Emma, I'm so sorry. She said you were sick." "I didn't know she had come on her own. I thought—" Emma knelt down and scooped Sophie into her arms. "I turned around for 1 minute," she murmured, more to herself than anyone. "You can't just walk out like that." Sophie wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. "I just wanted you to be happy again." Emma's eyes glistened. She looked up at Ethan, the initial panic fading into a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. "I didn't know I'm sorry she bothered you." Ethan shook his head gently. "She didn't," he said quietly. "She reminded me what kindness looks like." For a moment, none of them spoke. Outside, the winter wind danced across the bakery window, but inside, something warmer had begun to rise. And Ethan knew this was no ordinary evening. This was the beginning of something unexpected, something real. After the whirlwind of the unexpected meeting, the bakery had quieted. Most customers had left. The soft hum of the heater filled the cozy space, blending with the occasional clink of coffee cups being washed in the back. Ethan lingered by the door for a moment, unsure if he should go or stay. Emma was still sitting at the corner table, Sophie curled against her chest, now fast asleep. Tiny fingers tangled in her mother's sweater. He cleared his throat gently. "I heard you were sick," he said. "Are you feeling better?" Emma looked up, visibly caught between residual embarrassment and exhaustion. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, almost reflexively. "Just needed a bit of rest." Ethan gave a small nod. "Well, how about a warm drink just for a few minutes? You look like you haven't sat down properly all day." Emma hesitated, but Sophie shifted slightly in her arms, letting out a soft sigh. Emma gently adjusted her daughter, then nodded. "Okay, just for a few minutes." Ethan guided her toward a quieter corner table by the window. The lights outside had dimmed. Snow flurries danced under the amber glow of a street lamp. Inside, warmth wrapped around them like a gentle blanket. Sophie remained asleep, her cheek pressed to Emma's shoulder. Emma spoke first, voice low. "My husband died 2 years ago," she said. "Car accident. One moment we were planning Sophie's 3rd birthday, and the next—" She trailed off, eyes distant. "I didn't have time to grieve. Rent was due. Sophie needed me, so I baked. Learned from scratch. Burned the first 2 months of everything. But the oven became the one place where I could pretend things were okay." Ethan's gaze never left her face. He saw more than just tired eyes and flour-stained sleeves. He saw the weight she carried. "You know," he said slowly, "someone once told me that the strongest people are the ones who never realize they are." Emma let out a breath that was almost a laugh, almost a sigh. "Well, that person clearly never saw me crying over pie dough at 3 a.m. Ethan smiled, soft and sincere. "I think that person would admire you a lot." There was a silence, but not the awkward kind. It was a silence that let truth settle, that allowed two people who had lived through their own storms to acknowledge quietly that they had both survived. Then a small voice broke it. Sophie stirred, blinking sleepily. Her tiny voice was muffled by her thumb, still half in her mouth. "Are you going to leave now?" Ethan leaned forward, his tone playful but gentle. "Only if your mommy tells me to." Sophie looked up at her mother. Emma looked back at her, then at Ethan. She did not speak. She did not smile. Instead, she simply reached out and pulled the chair next to her a little closer to the table. Ethan sat down. No words were needed. For the first time in 2 years, Emma let someone stay. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan did not feel like an outsider walking into someone else's life. It was not a grand gesture, not a dramatic moment, just a tired woman, a sleeping child, and a man who knew how to be still and stay. The bakery lights flickered slightly as the heater kicked on again. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, something warmer had started to grow. The grocery store was quiet that Thursday evening, its aisles bathed in a soft yellow glow. The rush hour had passed, leaving behind only the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional wheel of a shopping cart echoing between the shelves. Emma pushed a half-full cart through the produce section. Her blonde hair was tied in a loose bun, and flour still dusted the sleeve of her cardigan, a clear sign she had come straight from the bakery. Her eyes looked tired, but her hands moved with gentle precision, checking for discounts, squeezing avocados, comparing prices. Sitting in the front basket was Sophie, swinging her legs and quietly humming a tune only 4-year-olds seemed to know by heart. She hugged a small plush bunny and watched her mother with curious, trusting eyes. At the far end of the store, Ethan Carter stood at the in-store coffee kiosk, waiting for his assistant to return with a folder of paperwork. He was half scrolling through his phone when someone caught his attention. Sophie. She spotted him first. "Mommy, that's the man I had cocoa with," she exclaimed, waving enthusiastically. Emma froze. She turned toward the voice, and their eyes met across the aisle. For a split second, Emma looked like she might pretend not to see him. But Ethan was already walking over, not with hesitation, but with warmth in his step and a quiet smile. "What a coincidence," he said casually. "You two taking a break from the bakery world?" Emma tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, flustered but polite. "Just grabbing a few things, trying to make sure she still eats something with green in it before payday." Her voice wasn't self-pitying. It was matter of fact, the kind of quiet honesty that made Ethan pause. As they walked together down another aisle, Emma asked Sophie, "Which yogurt do you want, strawberry or peach?" Sophie tilted her head thoughtfully, then whispered, "Which one is cheaper, Mommy?" Ethan's smile faltered, his chest tightening just a little. Emma laughed softly, though her eyes didn't. She's been learning how to choose between things since before she could count properly. They reached the checkout. Emma began unloading items onto the conveyor, checking and double-checking the price tags. While her back was turned, Ethan stepped ahead to another register, handed the cashier a folded note, and quietly said, "Please scan this gift card first." "Add a bag of the organic vegetables and that pastry she looked at. Don't say who it's from." He didn't stick around. He walked back to the coffee kiosk and waited. When Emma stepped outside, she peeked into one of the shopping bags. Nestled between the milk and rice was a small box of peach yogurt and a brown paper bag with 2 warm mini pastries, treats she hadn't picked out. Sophie's eyes lit up. "My favorite. Did you get these, Mommy?" Emma glanced around and her eyes landed on a familiar car parked across the lot. Inside, behind the windshield, Ethan sat in the driver's seat. He did not wave, did not honk. He simply watched, calmly, quietly, until her gaze met his. Emma didn't call out. She just held the bag a little closer to her chest and whispered, "Thank you for seeing us." The night air was crisp. The sidewalk shimmered faintly from an earlier drizzle. Emma and Sophie walked hand in hand toward home, a small family of 2, walking a little lighter. Behind them, Ethan remained in his car, hand resting on the wheel, eyes soft with something that wasn't quite longing but something close. And in that ordinary moment between grocery lists and unpaid bills, something unspoken passed between them. They had seen each other, and that had changed everything. The sky broke open without warning. Emma tightened her grip on Sophie's small hand as the first drops fell. They were halfway home, walking the long stretch between the market and the run-down row of rental units at the end of the street. Her thin cardigan clung to her shoulders, already soaked. Sophie shivered under her little hoodie. "It's okay, Mommy. We're almost home," the girl whispered, though her lips trembled. Just then, headlights splashed across the slick sidewalk. A silver SUV rolled to a stop beside them. The window slid down. Ethan stepped out, holding a large black umbrella that covered him in one smooth arc. Without a word, he tilted it over both of them. "Get in," he said gently. "You'll both catch a cold like this." Emma hesitated, pride bristling for a brief moment, but then she looked into his eyes, not pitying, not forceful, just concerned. She nodded once. Inside the warm car, Sophie curled into the back seat with a soft sigh. Emma rubbed her arms dry with a napkin Ethan handed her. The drive was quiet until they turned onto the narrow gravel path leading to her building. Ethan's gaze flicked to the rusted sign above the gate, the peeling numbers. The mailbox held together with duct tape. The car had barely stopped before the front door creaked open. A woman stood on the porch, arms crossed. The landlord. "Emma, you're 2 weeks late on rent," she barked, eyeing the luxury car suspiciously. "Today's the deadline. I can't keep your room open forever." Emma froze. Sophie looked up at her, confusion darkening her eyes. "Did we do something wrong, Mommy?" she asked quietly. Emma swallowed hard. Her cheeks burned hotter than the rain. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Ethan stepped forward, crouching slightly to meet Sophie's eye. "You were very brave in the rain, little lady," he said softly. Then he turned to Emma. "I'll let you settle in. Good night." No judgment, no interference, just kindness, wrapped in the dignity of silence. He left without waiting for a response, but the warmth he left behind lingered long after the taillights faded. The next morning, Emma was scrubbing the floor when a knock came at the door. The landlady, wearing an uncharacteristically wide smile, stood outside. "Emma," she chirped, "I just got a full payment this morning. 6 months' rent paid up front. Someone must really care about you." Emma stared at her. "There must be a mistake. I didn't—" "No mistake. Also, someone's coming by to fix the heater in that broken sink, free of charge. Just a little appreciation for a great tenant, you know." The door closed. Emma stood frozen, heart hammering against her ribs. She did not need to ask. She already knew. Sophie padded out of the bedroom, holding a crayon drawing with both hands. "I finished it," she said proudly. The picture showed a woman with yellow hair holding hands with a little girl in a pink dress. Behind them, just a little to the side, was a tall man with an umbrella, smiling, even though he stood in the rain alone. "That's the man who brings sunshine when it rains," Sophie announced, her voice innocent and sure. Emma blinked back, the sting in her eyes. She did not text Ethan, did not call. Instead, she baked. A small tart crust, blueberry filling with a hint of vanilla, his favorite. She wrapped it carefully in parchment, tied a simple blue ribbon around the box, and left it on the bakery counter. A note tucked beneath the bow read, "For someone who brings sunshine quietly." Ethan found the box on his desk the next morning. There was no name, no return address, but he did not need one. He smiled, then placed the box gently beside his laptop like a secret he intended to keep. And outside the window of his high-rise office, the rain had finally stopped. The next morning, the bell above the bakery door gave a soft jingle. Emma looked up from behind the counter, her eyes widening as she saw Ethan step inside. He carried no umbrella this time, no suit or pretense, just a warm smile and a quiet presence. "I figured," he said, approaching the counter casually. "That blueberry tart deserves a second chance." Emma blinked, caught between surprise and a sudden flutter in her chest. She tucked a stray hair behind her ear and gave a small, amused nod. "Well," she said, "we did bake them fresh this morning." She gestured to the table near the window, and he took a seat. It was the same corner where Sophie had once introduced herself in place of her mother. Only this time, Ethan wasn't meeting a stranger. He was returning to something that had already started. From the back room, Sophie's voice rang out. "It's the umbrella man!" She darted into the room, her little sneakers squeaking against the tiled floor. Her eyes sparkled with delight and her arms opened in a dramatic welcome. Ethan laughed softly and knelt to her level. "Did your castle get fixed yet, princess?" Sophie nodded with pride and pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I drew a new one. See?" On the page, in bright crayon colors, was a house with 3 stick figures, one tall, one with a ponytail, and one small with pigtails. A yellow sun beamed in the corner. A chubby gray cat sat on the porch. "That's us," she explained, "and Whiskers. He's imaginary, but Mommy says we'll get a real cat someday." Ethan looked at the drawing for a long moment before handing it back. "Looks like the happiest castle I've ever seen." Emma brought 2 drinks to the table, coffee for Ethan and warm milk with cinnamon for Sophie. They sat together, an unlikely trio that didn't feel unlikely anymore. They didn't talk about the rent, or the rain, or anything that might make things uncomfortable. Instead, they spoke of lighter things. Emma told him about how she used to bake with her grandmother, how she once ruined a batch of cookies because she mistook salt for sugar. Ethan, in turn, shared a memory about sneaking into the kitchen as a child to steal spoonfuls of whipped cream, only to be caught every time. He listened more than he spoke. His phone stayed in his pocket. When he laughed, it was real. When he smiled, it reached his eyes. Sophie climbed onto her usual stool but grew restless as customers began to trickle in. Emma tried to manage the growing line while keeping her daughter close, but it was getting difficult. Just as she reached for Sophie's hand, Ethan stood, rolled up his sleeves, and headed toward the sink. "Where do you keep the clean towels?" Emma stared at him, confused. "I can dry trays," he said, "or make cocoa. I'm certified in stirring things gently." She hesitated, but his tone was so light, so natural that she only nodded. "In that drawer," she said. Within minutes he was helping, wiping counters, refilling the sugar jars, passing out napkins with a quiet "enjoy your morning" to each customer. At one point, a silver-haired woman reached for her coffee and glanced between Emma and Ethan with a knowing smile. "Your husband's a keeper," she said in a voice low enough to be teasing. Emma's face turned a shade pinker than the strawberry glaze. "He's not," she murmured, looking away. But Ethan, just a few feet behind, didn't correct her either. He only glanced toward Emma, caught her eye, and smiled like he had all the time in the world. And for the first time in a long while, so did she. Emma's voice came through the phone just after 8 a.m., slightly breathless. "Ethan, I'm so sorry to ask this, but I just got called in for an extra shift. I won't make it to Sophie's school on time. Could you pick her up today?" There was no hesitation. "Of course," Ethan said immediately. "I'm already on my way." He wasn't, but he didn't need to be asked twice. The preschool yard was full of colors, tiny backpacks, laughter, teachers waving goodbye. Ethan waited by the gate, hands in his pockets, heart strangely nervous. He scanned the crowd for a familiar ponytail and pink shoes. Then he saw her. Sophie spotted him first and ran like the wind, her small arms outstretched. She barreled into his chest with a squeal of joy. "This is my new daddy!" The words flew out like a celebration, loud and proud. Heads turned. Parents chuckled. A teacher raised an eyebrow and smiled. Ethan froze for a moment, stunned. His mind reeled, not sure how to respond. But Sophie looked up at him with such trust, such certainty that something inside him melted. He crouched to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Then I better be a really good one," he whispered. He did not correct her. He did not laugh it off. For the first time in years, he let himself belong. They walked hand in hand to a nearby ice cream shop, Sophie bouncing with every step. "Mommy likes pistachio," she said as she licked her chocolate cone. "But only when she's sad. When she's happy, she gets strawberry." Ethan chuckled. "Good to know." She nodded solemnly. "Sometimes she forgets to turn off the kitchen light, and once she fell asleep hugging the laundry basket." "Must have been a very comfy basket," Ethan said with a grin. Sophie laughed, spraying a bit of ice cream on the table. Ethan didn't mind. Every small detail Sophie shared was like a window into Emma's world, and Ethan found himself treasuring each one. Later that afternoon, they arrived back at the familiar old rental complex. The sky had begun to darken, the late sun dipping behind the buildings. Emma stepped out of the doorway, apron still tied around her waist, strands of blonde hair falling across her cheeks. "Bye-bye, Daddy," Sophie called out brightly, waving as she skipped toward her mother. Emma's smile faltered, her eyes widened. "Sophie," she said gently. "Ethan's just Mommy's friend, sweetheart." "Not." Her voice trailed off, unsure. Ethan took a step forward, heart steady, eyes only on Emma. He could have laughed, could have dismissed it as a child's imagination, could have changed the subject, but he didn't. Instead, he said quietly, "I want to be her dad, Emma." Her breath caught. "If you'll let me love you, both of you." Emma froze. Her fingers curled slightly into the fabric of her dress as if grounding herself. He had not said "I love you" in the scripted way of movies. He had not made a dramatic speech or handed her roses. But his words landed like truth, solid, steady, real, the kind of love that comes not from flowers or dinners, but from showing up, again and again, from walking into a child's school, buying pistachio ice cream, remembering the kitchen light, and offering something even deeper than affection. A place to belong. Emma didn't answer right away. She looked down at Sophie, now sitting on the front step, humming to herself, legs swinging freely. Then she looked back at Ethan. Her eyes were full, but not with fear, with something closer to belief. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of yes. Time moved gently after that. There were no fireworks, no grand announcements, just quiet routines becoming something more. Some days Emma and Sophie came over to Ethan's home. They would eat dinner together, then curl up on the couch to watch cartoons. More than once, Sophie fell asleep between them, her head on Ethan's chest, her tiny fingers still holding the TV remote. Emma would doze off too, her cheek pressed against his shoulder while outside the city lights blinked softly. Other days, Ethan showed up at their place. No bouquets, no gestures of grandeur, just a large bag slung over his shoulder and a warm smile. He installed a soft glow nightlight shaped like a moon in Sophie's room. He added a small bookshelf, then filled it with secondhand storybooks. He brought sparkly princess stickers and let Sophie decide where to stick them, on the fridge, the door, even the toaster. He never asked, never insisted. He was just there. When something flickered or needed fixing, he noticed. When they laughed, he listened. When they were quiet, he stayed. Over time, Sophie started calling him Daddy without hesitation. Emma stopped correcting her. Once at school, Sophie proudly told a friend, "My daddy makes the best pancakes and my mommy laughs more now." And it was true. Emma's laughter became more frequent, easier, lighter, as if her heart had finally unclenched. One rainy afternoon, the three of them baked together in Emma's tiny kitchen. Flour ended up in Sophie's hair, chocolate smudged across Ethan's cheek, and Emma couldn't stop laughing when Ethan accidentally dropped a spoon into the mixing bowl. The kitchen was a mess, flour on the floor, sprinkles everywhere, but the laughter echoed like a song that didn't want to end. In the middle of it all, Emma looked at Ethan. His sleeves rolled up, dough on his hands, helping Sophie pipe cream onto crooked cookies. And in that moment, Emma realized she had never known peace like this. Not the still kind, but the full kind. The kind that fills a space not with silence, but with belonging. That night, as they sat down with tea and cookies, Ethan placed a small, heart-shaped pastry box on the table. Emma smiled and opened it, expecting another sweet surprise. But there was no pastry inside. Nestled in the center was a ring, simple, delicate, with a tiny engraving along the band. She looked up, startled. Ethan didn't kneel. He didn't recite poetry. He simply reached for her hand and held it gently. "I won't promise perfection," he said quietly. "But if you and Sophie will let me, I'll stay. For good." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, not from fear, but from relief, from recognition. from knowing that the man who had walked into their lives wasn't there to fix them, just to love them as they were. She whispered, voice catching on the edge of a smile. We've been waiting long enough, and in that moment a family wasn't made, it was acknowledged. Months later, customers at Maple and Honey Bakery often paused near the front counter. There, in a modest white frame, stood a photo. 3 people, Emma in her apron, Ethan in his sleeves rolled up, and Sophie between them, holding a cupcake in one hand and gripping Ethan's thumb in the other. Below the photo, a small handwritten sign read, "Our sweetest recipe. Love, patience, and a little flour." If this story touched your heart, you're not alone. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand gestures. It walks in quietly, holds an umbrella in the rain, and makes pancakes on Sunday mornings. Ethan, Emma, and little Sophie reminded us that family isn't always about blood. It's about showing up, staying, and choosing each other every day. If you believe in stories that heal, that uplift, and that remind us of the goodness in the world, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales. More heartfelt journeys await right here, where love always finds a way.